Hi everyone, today let's talk about the House passing the debt bill. Then we'll go over the economic factors. Then I'll go over Max Payne for tomorrow. Then we'll go over the charts. And then we'll go over my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open, as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So the House passed the bill and everything is on track. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the Senate will do everything it can to move quickly. The bill passed pretty well, 314 to 117. Bipartisan support. You would like to see the government do this in other areas and not just when their back is up against the wall. You see here, neither side got everything it wanted, and that's the responsibility of governing. So again, some bipartisan negotiations for the first time in what seems like forever from the government. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see non-farms came in very high, jobless claims lower than expectations, job market still very, very strong. Manufacturing PMI much lower than expectations. ISM manufacturing in manufacturing prices also lower than expectations. So economic factors still continuing to deteriorate here. Fed balance sheet sold off by about 50 billion, so they're continuing to offload their balance sheet. In terms of cash on hand, you can see 3.2 trillion, which was down a little bit from the previous read. Looking at tomorrow, pretty big day here. Average hourly earnings month over month. Non-farm payrolls here at 8:30. Unemployment rate also at 8:30. I expect both of these to be better than expectations. They continue to outperform here. The job market continues to be quite strong, and I don't expect that to stop quite yet, which overall should be slightly bullish for the markets if it's not already priced in. Moving over to Fed futures, these continue to drift towards a pause once again pretty highly here above that 75% mark. We're only a week and 5 days away, so we do have some data next week that will affect this. But so far, this looks most likely like we will get a pause. Moving over to Max Payne here, you can see Max Payne is now at 416, slightly higher than previous. Amount of options, 1.77 million, not a ton. Put call ratio at 2.8. Still looking at about 422.5 as a nice little spot for the market to settle at the end of day tomorrow. Still looking at 423 as the high side, 420 as the low. And we're pretty much right there already, right in this sweet spot for markets to finish basically unchanged tomorrow. Would be a nice finish for Wall Street. Moving over to the charts, you can see what I was talking about, right at that 422.50 area, right at that previous high. We're at resistance on the daily chart. Momentum on both of these are very bullish, so it still looks like we could go higher here. But I do think 423 is probably going to be your high side. Even if we overthrow this, I would expect a retest of this area going into the end of day. So bullish going into the day. But either way, I'm watching for that Max Payne finish tomorrow. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see we rallied from my lower level to my upper level. Got a clear rejection off of that point, so definitely interesting to watch. We're rallying pretty aggressively after hours. LULU had some pretty good earnings. I'm honestly surprised how aggressive this is considering the down move that we had off of that clear level. I did get squeezed out of some of my bullish positions on this down move, so that's a little bit disappointing here. But if we get above 353.20, then I will definitely flip everything to bullish up to 356.80. Momentum is moving towards bullish, RSI moving bullish again, and this rally after hours just continues to move higher here. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell had a nice little rally, pushed above my 174 level after establishing this trend line and a higher low versus the previous low. Nice rally up to resistance. You can see this trend line has been here just above my horizontal resistance. I was thinking about chasing this rally a little bit, but I was watching this downtrend line, and we ended up getting a little bit of a rejection here. If we pop above it, maybe I'll start to get a little bit more bullish here on the Russell. But right now we're at resistance. Looking at the Dow here, you can see continues to rally off of support. Looking at resistance at 332.44, and then we have the trend line just below that. So it looks like a counter trend rally to resistance. And then I would expect this to break down from that level. Might get a retest of the 200 SMA, certainly possible. So an overthrow of these trends and then a continuation lower, certainly possible. But in the short term, momentum and RSI are both bullish. Moving over to the equal weighted S&Ps here, I just want to continue to demonstrate that this is very separated. You can see the regular S&Ps moving much, much higher, establishing higher lows and trend going higher, while the equal weighted S&Ps are establishing lower highs and continuing lower here. Momentum is slightly bullish in the short term, but we're below basically all the EMAs and SMAs, and you would expect for this to continue lower. You can see it's actually more disjointed as we start to zoom out here, so clear separation between the regular and equal weighted S&Ps. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, both of these moved up strongly today. Took out both of those previous wicks on Apple, took out my 179.61 level. Now we're pushing up to 182.28. Bullish on the close. Everything looks bullish here, closing above that level on Apple. Momentum bullish, RSI overbought, but still bullish. Tesla also breaking through its resistance level, testing this previous high from 31 March. If that breaks, I'm watching 217.14. You can see that's kind of a midpoint. You can see that level is the high going back to 16 February. We're in this previous consolidation area at this point, but it still looks very bullish and continuing to make higher highs, looking at 217.14 as the next resistance. Moving over to Roku and Netflix, you can see Netflix continuing to move parabolically to the upside, making new highs again here today. Roku also threatening to break out above this 200 SMA on the 4-hour chart. We're holding in this zone, consolidating, decent volume, nice momentum. It certainly looks like we could get a breakout here soon, if not tomorrow. Everything looks very bullish here on Roku. Moving over to Broadcom and NVDA, I just wanted to highlight that these have not actually made new highs here recently. Broadcom through that huge, and then it's gone sideways. NVIDIA still slowly trickling higher, but it's not above its previous high yet on this kind of a grind. It was a bullish day, but it was very bearish yesterday. Momentum is fading. RSI is below the SMA here on NVIDIA. Still a very bullish trend, but it's interesting to see that these are not leading to the upside anymore, but we're still rallying at least a little bit. Moving over to LULU and Amazon, you can see LULU had their earnings hit that level, what's the previous high from this consolidation area, and then jumped back up to trendline resistance in one fell swoop. Very quick move on earnings, very powerful. Probably should have expected this after the very powerful move they had after the last earnings, but sure enough, LULU is still doing well as a company, despite this huge down move that it had after the previous earnings. Amazon continuing to grind up, making new highs here again today. Looking at resistance up around 126.45. Moving over to staples and discretionary, you can see staples still finding some buyers here at 72.50. Fairly interesting level, waiting for this to move a little bit higher. Momentum building, volume also building. Still a downtrend, and we're waiting for that reversal, but it's interesting here at this point. Discretionary continues to rally. Nice bullish day off of yesterday's bullish day. We didn't make a new high quite yet, but we threw wicks at that level, 153.90. Looks like we're up above that after hours here. And if this continues to rally, we have trendline resistance up around 156. Moving over to oil and gas and utilities, you can see oil and gas found some buyers. We're in this consolidation area. We've had multiple lows here. Nice rally off of there. This is still a lower high versus this previous high, but nice little green day. Momentum is still bearish. You'd like to see this start to trend up a little bit better here, but it's slightly higher versus this previous low. And like I said, a little bit of buying here happening on XOP. We talked about this being a potential area for support, and it seems like that's happening here. Utilities selling off from that resistance area and the 9 EMA. It was still a downtrend, but again, it looks like a nice support area at 64.20. These previous lows looked like an area where we were going to find some buyers. It does seem like that's happening here as well, even with the down move today. Moving over to the transportation ETF, you can see nice bullish day. Transport's rallying with everything else. Big bullish momentum. Didn't take out the previous high yet, but we came off of that trend support just like we have several times here. Looking at this daily chart, you can see those 3 lows. And if we can get above some of these EMAs here, we're right at that level, then we might push back up to 228.50. That would be interesting. Then maybe even trend resistance up here at 230.87. But like I said, we have these previous highs that we got to get above first. In terms of volume here today, look at that daily candle. Tons and tons of volume. Very interesting. Last time we got a volume candle similar to that, we had a very powerful run afterwards. So keep an eye on this one. Transports looks like it's setting up to go higher. Moving over to yields, these continue to pull back here. We saw the Fed futures going back to a pause. And it seems like that's getting priced into the 2-year and the 10-year yield now, which is starting to prop up the markets a little bit, in my opinion. Yields back to support here on the 10-year. 2-year still has a little bit of room before it hits support at that 4.25 area. Either way, both of these are pulling back, and it seems to be propping up the markets at least a little bit in the short term. Moving over to the 50 and 200-day averages here, this is actually starting to look like a higher low setup and a bit of a base. You have this previous low on both charts, and now we have a new low again on both charts. It's a higher low here on the 50-day average. It's a double bottom here on the 200 average. It still could go lower. We're still below all the EMAs and SMAs, and it's still definitely a downtrend. But this was a pretty powerful day. So we gapped down, gap up, had that candle, gap down again, nice rally off of that level. It was actually a gap up on the 50-day average. We're above this previous trend line. We're above this horizontal resistance. Looking at RSI on the 200, you can see we're above the SMA. So definitely interesting here. Like I said, we're still below all the EMAs and SMAs, but it does look very similar to this previous iteration. And then we had a powerful rally out of that zone. Doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to happen immediately, but there's definitely some buyers coming in at this area in terms of breadth. And if we come down to a quarter on breadth on the 50-day average, and then we see this rally back into a healthier range up around that 60 to 77 area, that would be a pretty powerful rally, and we could see the S&Ps go much higher from here if we get a little bit of follow through on this breadth indicator. Moving over to the dollar, we ended up cratering here today. Talked about this looking like a consolidation at resistance. Threw a couple of wicks through that level, tested it one more time here today in the early morning hours, and then sold off throughout the day. Very big down move. You can see that here on the 12-hour chart. Momentum and RSI look very bearish. At this point, we're below 103.64, watching for 102.98. That's also right on top of the 200 SMA here on the 12-hour chart. Momentum very bearish here on the dollar. That's probably propping up the markets a little bit as well. Moving over to high yields and TLT, you can see high yields having a nice bullish day again. It's actually a big gap down and then rally and ended up finishing slightly higher than yesterday. But again, buyers coming in, momentum continuing bullish. I still want to see this get above 91 and then definitely get above these downtrend lines. But at this point, starting to look like a higher low setup on JNK. TLT, gap up, doji, momentum still bullish. Yields are starting to come into an area where they might find a little bit of support, and TLT is also at a little bit of resistance here at 103.70, so more neutral on TLT, maybe even slightly bearish, but momentum is still bullish, so be patient here on TLT. Maybe we see a little bit of an exhaustion up to 105.28. That would be interesting, but it seems to be losing a little bit of momentum going into the Friday session. Moving over to the MOVE index and the VIX, you can see the MOVE cratered support, which is interesting. Momentum moving lower. It's back into a more normalized range here, which is interesting. It's rallied up into this zone, and it seems like we're starting to break down here now. So keeping an eye on this one. If this starts to break down further, that should be bullish for markets. Moving over to the VIX, we gapped through that trend line, tagged it, and then continued lower. We're at these previous lows here now. Momentum very bearish, RSI very bearish. And really, as soon as this level broke, we should have expected that this was going to be a big down day here today, and that is what we got. So we're still trending down on the VIX and trending higher on markets. Moving over to my accounts, I did okay. I definitely could have done better. I got squeezed out a little bit on that down move. You can see I had those covered calls going into the day, and I held those throughout the day. I could have rolled these out in time, maybe squeezed a little bit more out of them. That would have been interesting. But I didn't do it and ended up here in a little bit of a red spot with these calls that I started to sell in the mid-session. I have lots of puts on for tomorrow. I have 4 puts here at 348 and 349, and some puts here 2 days out at 348. So still a decent amount of puts, and I'm still relatively bullish here, but these calls are pretty close to the money, and I should have probably been a little bit more bullish going into the end of the day. Otherwise, we'll see how it plays out tomorrow with non-farms and the unemployment rate. I also still have this 174 put on the IWM. I want to see the IWM get above that trend line, and then I can start to chase it a little bit more to the bullish side. Otherwise, I think we might get a little bit of a rejection from that level, which would be potentially an opportunity to get in a little bit lower. But either way, bullish on the IWM pending that trend line. And similarly here on the Qs, slightly bullish, but a little bit neutral just because of that horizontal resistance. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the debt ceiling voting. Is it going to go through the Senate without any issues, or will there be a hiccup? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.